So much, Kelly, for the introduction, and for everybody else for being here after so many different sessions for one more topic with me, focusing on culturally responsive and sustaining education in a time of crisis. So this is really important for me to emphasize that while CRSE has been around for quite some time, I'm going to take a special angle today, recognizing how we might have had to adjust our approach to CRSE during this time of crisis. So those of you who have never been in my workshops and you are thinking about that accent, I was born and raised and first taught as an EFL teacher in Hungary. And here are some of my favorite images of my home country. And for the past 20 years, I've been at Molloy College, first directing the TESOL program and then the EDD program that Kelly already mentioned. And I've also published extensively. I'd like to give a shout out to all of my co-authors as well, because as you know, my main topic of exploration is collaboration and co-teaching, if you are familiar with my work. However, today, I'm going to focus on a really important aspect of this kind of work, which is being culturally and linguistically responsive and sustaining in our work. So our objectives are very ambitious, as you could see, to redefine or define CRSE, unpack the 4 principles of this framework, and then consider the implications of the framework to working with English learners during a time of crisis and when we work with them remotely. Here is my agenda, and in this agenda, you could see that I am, again, very ambitious to try to break up the hour and make it as interactive as possible by starting off with an interactive Zoom presentation. I will show you how you're going to be participating a lot. Then I designed a breakout room for you. Zoom is going to automatically place you in a breakout room. And during the time, about 12, 15 minutes when we come to that, please use the Padlet link that I'm sharing here, and later on we'll be sharing again in the Zoom chat for an easy access. There are 4 choices. The Padlet link takes you to a choice board, and I'm going to invite you in your Zoom rooms, just start talking about any of the topics that would appeal to you. There are resources there and so forth. For the last 10 minutes, we're going to return. Zoom is going to automatically close your breakout room and bring you back to the main room. And we are going to be, actually, Kelly, if I could ask you to retype that, because it's Arburn 4. So today, as you said, is our 4th session. And I
okay, sorry.
All of my, that's okay, no problem. So those of you who have been with me 4 times, you know that I like structure and organization and consistency. So all of my webinars had exactly the same structure, exactly the same segments, and also had a corresponding Padlet link. And if you are not part of my workshops, but you want to go back to those Padlets, it's very, very easy. You just change the code from Arburn 1, 2, 3, 4. So Kelly is going to retype that for you. It's actually Arburn 4 at the end, what will be the corresponding Padlet for today. So let's get started. And when I tell you that you're going to be participating, you will notice that in a moment by answering this question. What have been, and I'm really anticipating many, what have been the greatest challenges that your students faced during the COVID-19 crisis? So in the chat box, please type away and reflect on what were those especially challenging moments, experiences that when you think of your students, when you show empathy for their past 3 months of experiences, where do you see the biggest gaps, the biggest challenges? I see technology a lot, family responsibilities, anxiety, the social emotional aspect, accessing, again, technology. Many of you are talking about resources, poverty, so technology skills, loss of parent and family members, so truly heartbreaking family experiences, and many students did not have a device and so forth. The lack of social interaction, time management, anxiety. Thank you for adding multiple examples from your experiences to that. So the challenges are too many to start going over them one at a time. So let's jump into some possible solutions. So one that caught my eyes a couple of months ago was this tweet by Sim Kern, and I used a couple of her thoughts before, who said, please don't assign them a worksheet to be due every day. Not only will assigning open-ended, flexible, individualized work will be more motivating and enriching, it's a social justice issue. And it really caught my eyes, not only because I direct a doctoral program focusing on social justice and equity, but looking beyond the motivation, the access, the possibilities for our students to be engaged in meaningful learning, looking at the justice piece of it, the equity piece of it. And that's where the CRSE framework from New York State comes in place. And of course, she continues when she says, think about the privileged only child with a state-of-the-art laptop and a bedroom that locks, taking for granted something that many of our Long Island families have. Yet on the flip side, let's also think of a kid sharing a bedroom with 2 siblings, no internet at home, parents have just been laid off, and there is no food stockpiled, or even worse. As you shared your own experiences, there are many tragedies and illnesses and even worse, death that our students have experienced. So back to the Zoom chat. I anticipate that every one of you will be immediately typing in, what is this? So I don't anticipate that anybody will have any trouble quickly identifying. Type in, not gonna say what it is, just you're gonna type in what you see on the screen. And if you immediately know what it is, why does it matter? I need to see some people typing in. Oh yes, okay, very good. EDU 101 or Psych 101, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Second question, why does it matter? Why does it matter? Something that was developed decades ago. It has been critiqued quite a bit, but it's still holding up pretty well. Yeah, thank you, Alba. Without recognizing Maslow, probably nothing else is going to take place in education. Understanding our students, the basic needs. Yeah, we have to definitely start there. A strong sense of self, safety. We can't get to Bloom's until we met Maslow's hierarchy of needs first. Beautifully stated. Thank you so much for participating. So take a look at this now. And don't blink, because then you're going to miss it. Ooh, that was my only animation in the entire presentation. So this is, of course, a revised hierarchy of needs. And I'm borrowing it from Diane Sterfener, who came to Long Island quite a bit. And there is her link to the blog where she explained that maybe in this day and age, we have to re-examine and shuffle the hierarchy of needs a little bit, where all of a sudden physiological needs and safety needs might even be switching over, that our main concern is survival, sheltering in place, slowing down the coronavirus, making sure that people have their jobs, their safety net is there. And on the top, she also reversed things, putting esteem is as the highest and self-actualization a little bit lower. So type in some comments about it, please. What do you think? Does it make sense to re-examine Maslow's hierarchy of needs and shifting some of these a little bit around? Love and belonging is still in the middle. We could even further play around with these features and these needs, and you might decide that for you or for your students, it actually looks quite different. So any comments on that? If you could please type in. I'm still reading the previous comments that you shared. Very insightful to better understand that students cannot complete work if they're primarily concerned with their basic needs. And those basic needs continue to be physiological and safety needs. Okay, a couple of you said that it makes sense to just reflect on this for a moment. Okay. And every student is different. Thank you so much, Daniela, for highlighting that different people will be experiencing this crisis, will be experiencing what is happening differently because of their situations being unique. So New York State developed the CRSE framework, and I was very fortunate to be on the advisory board. So please type it in the chat box, yes or no, if you have had any kind of training or experience with the implementation. This was rolled out about a year ago. But of course, with everything else going on, I don't anticipate that there was extensive training, but just want to get an idea, just a yes or no. I'm seeing a lot of no's coming in now. Initially, there were some yeses or some sums. So I often like to highlight in my workshops best kept secrets in New York State. And definitely this is one of those best kept secrets that I really hope that when we come out of this crisis situation, we will have an opportunity to revisit. So when Long Island Auburn invited me and we were reviewing what kind of topics I could address, I felt very strongly that this document, this framework, which is not policy, it's a frame of reference, did not receive enough attention in the past. And there was not an opportunity for it to fully bloom. As you could see, it's a tree. So maybe I will have an opportunity to bring this back to you during this workshop. And thank you so much for so many of you, 99 of you, thought that this is important enough to be here on a Friday afternoon. So there are 4 core principles of this framework. And what I'd like you to type in now in your chat boxes, and I numbered them, 1, 2, 3, 4. Which of these do you feel that during the online or remote learning time, during this time of crisis, you intuitively or intentionally paid the most attention to? Creating a welcoming and affirming online environment, maintaining high expectations and rigor, even though that's really challenging, paying attention to curriculum and assessment and making sure that that is inclusive, or your own ongoing professional learning, which is what you've been doing with me. Those of you who've been here all 4 times, I'm gonna need you to just send me a little note that you've been here 4 times, so definitely have done number 4 as well, which is ongoing professional learning. I'm seeing, Kelly, what are you seeing evolving here? What's the pattern that you're seeing? I'm seeing a lot of 1s. A lot of you.
Yes, a lot of 1s, 1 and 3, 1 and 4. Yeah, a lot of 1 and 4, I think.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And I have a couple of lovely notes that you've been here all 4 times and you're coming back on Monday and Tuesday. Thank you so much. So let's go through these 4 core principles, and I try to screenshot and enlarge them just to introduce or reintroduce you to these. And in the chat box, again, now share concrete examples. How did you do this? If this is the description, what it looks like in the classroom, when we want to focus on creating that welcoming, affirming environment, and we want to create a space, a physical space. Now, we can no longer do that during this time of crisis. So how were you able to create or recreate this notion of an affirming online environment or an affirming remote learning environment when we know that our kids are in their own homes? Okay, journal writing, thank you so much. So some of your ideas are now coming in. One participant says that the screen is stuck. Everybody else seems to be with me, so it must be your computer. Please restart the Zoom call, come back. If anytime you have a technical difficulty, please address it to Kelly so that she could help you. So I'm seeing lots of wonderful comments about reaching out to students, the native language support, making yourselves available, collaborating with the guidance counselor, video chatting, daily phone calls. Oh my gosh, the level of commitment that so many educators made to somehow make sure that the kids are accounted for, that they feel that they count, and they reached out to them. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'd also like to share, of course, examples, as you know, from my travels, from my connections, both nationally and internationally. And I could not help but celebrate and notice this amazing summary chart from the Ready, Set, Co-Teach team in North Carolina. A big shout out to them. on redefining what a virtual classroom culture is all about, what are the potential challenges, and also offering lots of possible solutions. So this, of course, this entire PowerPoint, those of you who have not been here before with me, will be available to you on that Padlet. So you'll see that everything I share, I truly share, and you will have access to them. Okay, let's move on. The next is a really, really challenging one. This is the one that we had the least amount of identification in the group chat. How do we ensure high expectations and rigorous instruction to continue during these times of crisis? So again, I'd like to ask you to type in some of your ways that you wanted to make sure that the learning continues, that it's intellectually challenging, that it recognizing the students' needs, of course, for scaffolds, but at the same time, you are adding that higher level of critical thinking, the critical reasoning, that our students are invited to take academic risks, growth mindset, learning from mistakes. So beautiful answers coming in, open-ended questions, polls, but some of you are saying that this is the hardest one. This is just very, very difficult to accomplish. Thank you, Maddie, for the honesty that you're saying that you might not have succeeded at this. And please don't think that any of what I'm doing is a gotcha. It is simply extending your thinking as well as challenging and validating your thinking around these. And I agree with you 100%. That of the 4 pillars of this framework, probably this is where we have to pause, have to plan, and engage in more online and professional learning. How are we going to do this in the fall if we need to do some kind of hybrid or online or blended learning? Recorded lessons, love that. Thank you so much for jumping in with some additional ideas. By the way, whatever is in the chat box, if you did not know this, that also gets recorded and will be saved as a Word document or as a PDF. So thank you for the additional comments on differentiation, more recording lessons, giving examples, videos, tutorials for the students, detailed answer keys with annotated notes. Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. Wonderful answers. Okay, so another wonderful resource that I recently discovered comes to us from edsearch.com, and I'm not expecting that you're memorizing this entire chart, but please come back to this chart because it is so enlightening on how to think of engagement online. And one way we could think about that. Okay, we're going to ask everybody who comes on board,
yes,
can you
please mute yourself?
Mute yourselves? Thank you. Zoom is very sensitive. It picks up background noise as well. So back to this chart, thinking in terms of behavioral, cognitive, and emotional engagement. So obviously we could even add linguistic there because that's our bread and butter, but that could fit under linguistic behavior or literacy usage, the cognitive processes, and emotionally reflecting and expressing our experiences. So take a look at this and think about how moving forward, these are the ways that we can think about enhancing engagement online if remote learning has to continue, and what are some common ways that we can measure it or reflect on it. I also saw this a little bit dated. This is now about 6 years old, but I still thought that it truly fits with our conversation today on how we can ensure stronger engagement. And this engagement framework pinpointed 3 components: teacher engagement, that's what we do as teachers; parent engagement, which is extremely difficult under these situations; and then peer engagement, that's collaboration, use of native language, engaging in authentic learning opportunities. And see how that triangle gets really, really small for our students when each of these 3 forms or sources of engagement shrink. And then what happens when teacher engagement, parent engagement, and peer engagement expand, then our English learner student engagement also gets bigger and more meaningful. So thinking in terms of how, yes, we teachers, we try to do so much, but there are other components that we need to bring aboard and incorporate in our teaching for student engagement to be bigger. And of course, I have to absolutely give a shout out to LILTA and the Long Island Black Educators Association for everything that they have done on Long Island, and many, many other organizations, schools, districts. Your picture could have been up there as well. Those of you who made home visits, who delivered resources to your students when the buses were involved in dropping off laptops and tablets and so forth. So thank you so much for everything you've done for our Long Island students. And finally, I'm going to ask you to now continue reflecting a little bit on what comes to us from teachingtolerance.org related to high-level rigorous instruction with high expectations and engagement. So the first point they make is critical engagement with the material. If it's challenging for them, for our students to critically engage with us and with their peers, how could we enhance their critical engagement with rich, motivating, personally relevant material? The second is differentiated instruction. If it was ever needed, it certainly is going to be needed now. And recently I heard from Jose Medina, it totally blew my mind what he said. He said, and you will love this, now every single American child is a SIVE student, a student with interrupted formal education, because it disrupted education in the entire country. So thinking in terms of how differentiated instruction is just a must. Cooperative and collaborative learning, really, really difficult online or a remote context, but it is truly important to create opportunities for students to interact. And I'll try to model that during my workshops with you. And finally, the real world connections, that why are we learning this, especially in this time of crisis? Why does it matter? So in the chat box, again, tap in a couple of numbers. Which of these intentionally, intuitively, you focused on during the past 3 months? Which of these did you try to more hone in? Because it's very hard to do. We recognize that all 4 of these, to be constantly planning around these practices, is extremely challenging. So I'm seeing that many of you chose 1 or 2, 1, 2, 3. 1 or 2 is a lot. Yeah, some 4s are coming up. So thank you. Okay, and this is just a really interesting article that I came across, that even our preschoolers prefer books rich in whys. So very, very young children already know that they want to be challenged. They don't want to be babied. Their engagement really comes from opportunities to open their minds. So just food for thought. You could read that article later as well. So let's move on to an inclusive curriculum and assessment practice. And here the emphasis is on making sure that we are examining the power and privilege context that we live in, and how we can make sure that our students are going to grow up as positive agents of social change. This is no small feat, of course, focusing on biases, inequities in our teaching. So type in something that you were able to do around this topic of making your curriculum more inclusive, assessment more fair and equitable. Any examples of how you critically examined maybe some current events, maybe some things that were going on or are or continue to go on in our region, in the country, and beyond. See if there are any responses to this. This is, again, really challenging journal writing. Again, thank you, Monica, for starting us with sharing that. Current events, read alouds, yes. So some of these cross-curricular around Juneteenth, wonderful. Nonviolent protests, quick rides. Thank you for sharing how current events. We're just going to ask anybody who is joining us now to mute their mics, and project-based learning as well. Okay. So this organization, diversebooks.org, made this their primary focus and mission to imagine a world in which every single child can see themselves on the pages of a book. Isn't that just truly powerful to try to accomplish that mission? And of course, there are other ways to look at it. Here are a few quick tips on how to make sure that we select and then leverage a culturally responsive text. We definitely have to read it for ourselves and anticipate some of the questions, especially the difficult conversations that we would have. And read alouds did come up a lot in your responses. And again, going back to this idea, let's not shy away from connecting the curriculum and the remote Zoom calls or Google Hangouts and other learning opportunities to the students' lives and experiences, and definitely our shared experiences as society. And here are a couple of really wonderful examples. I think in one of my other workshops, I already mentioned as an authentic example for learning how Michelle Gill from British Columbia in Canada ended the school year by inviting the students to create a virtual yearbook and truly sharing their experiences with all the typos and whatnot on what it felt like to finish their first year or second, third year in a school in Canada. And here's another example from Michelle about making every effort to ensure that students see themselves in the curriculum. So please jot down a couple of examples of how you were able to ensure that the students saw themselves in the curriculum. And while you're doing that, I'm going to correct that typo there. Students seeing themselves. Not sure how that happened. I guess there is no spell check on capitalized letters. So how did you ensure that they see themselves? Okay, research papers on people who influence them. Beautiful. Essay prompts, personal experiences, add their names in the assignments. Read novels that reflect their personal experiences. Heroes from their native country. Beautiful characters that look like them. Prompt writing. Text choices are very intentional. Okay. Thank you so much. Keep them coming. I love that, Kim. Personal feedback. So the material could be personalized, and the interaction, the process could be personalized. And then the product, what the students are producing, can be more personalized, more based on choice. Wonderful. So, and finally, ongoing professional learning. I think that's exactly what you're doing right now. So you are new to this. You've been probably zoomed out, and this entire year or semester has been a whirlwind of Zoom calls and Google Meets. The point here is that we need to make sure that we create an opportunity for examining and re-examining our teaching. So here are a few sources of professional learning that have been taking off a lot more than ever before. And in the chat box, please write down which of these have you most participated in. And if I left something off, maybe you did other ways of enhancing your own professional learning, what was it? Webinars, okay, so it seems like that webinars truly took off almost instantly. I'm seeing Twitter, a couple of you, and collaboration with colleagues, using each other as a source of information, a source of strength, challenging and supporting each other at the same time. Social media, YouTube, very good, very good. So lots of different places where you look for resources. And lots of, I see that, Jen, lots of webinars. And Long Island Auburn, yay. Thank you for that big shout out to the organization that is sponsoring this series. And blogs and social media have also been very, very powerful in my professional life and learning. And again, I look to Diane Stefaner, my professional and personal friend and colleague and co-author with Corwin Press, and this brilliant, brilliant guest post that was recently posted on practical strategies and resources for distance learning. I especially wanted to highlight this part about how if we go back into this remote learning, how to balance the asynchronous and synchronous learning opportunities based on language proficiency levels. Really, really brilliant. You could certainly read this after the workshop is over. And there is a little bit of an elaboration on what do we mean by synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities and what are the advantages and disadvantages for our English learners. I really, really recommend this as you're preparing for the new year to put together a toolkit of readings, a blog post, a couple of articles, maybe things that you could pull from the various Padlets that I created for you. Yes, the PowerPoint is going to be on the Padlet. Not yet. It's not there because then you would be watching that and not me. So I'm going to save it there later. And of course, Twitter. Those of you who know me, you know that I am a very active Twitter user. And a couple of really fabulous things that are going on in Twitter, just sharing. Sharing is, and I'm so honored how many times people highlight my work and my books, and lots of podcasts and blogs that are really powerful, and just sharing ideas like, look, this is what I do, how to use an animated GIF to enhance learning. So lots of teachers are sharing so generously, and Twitter is one of those platforms to do so. So now we're going to get into our breakout rooms right on time. It's 2:36. I promised you we're going to do it at 2:35, so we're just a minute behind. So please indulge me and allow me to explain what to expect next. What I'm going to need first is that Kelly allows me to become host. I was co-host so far, so Zoom has that tricky little switch that I need to be the host to be able to assign you to about 15 to 18 breakout rooms. There are 99 people here. So as soon as I become host, I'm going to be assigning you to breakout rooms. Okay, now what are you going to do in your breakout rooms? Please, please, please turn on your videos, turn on your mics, and engage in a 10, 12, 15-minute conversation about any of these 4 topics. So you do need that Arbor link, so I'm going to ask Kelly to type it in. There it is. She already knew what I was going to say. So one more time, in case you have not been, you don't need to log in. Just click on that Padlet link. It's going to take you exactly what I'm showing you right now. Once you're there on that Padlet link, you are going to be doing 2 things. Stay in Zoom to have the conversation around your choice discussion topic, any of the 4 main pillars of the CRSE framework, or you could also look at the additional resources. And at the bottom, you see these plus signs. Add your comments. Not everybody needs to participate in the typing, so you could decide who is going to capture your ideas. So I'm going to put you in the breakout room right now. Are there any questions before I put you there? Because I want to make sure that
Dr. Honigsfeld, just to reiterate, so it is a choice board. So once we're in the breakout rooms, the members in each room can choose which item they'd like to address.
exactly.
Okay.
And I'm putting you in actually 12 breakout rooms, so that there would be about 7 or 8 participants in each room. And I will try to visit a few of you. You could also signal that you need me to come to you. Imagine that we're in a conference room with about 90, 100 participants, and now you're going to be working in smaller groups. Okay, and then you're going to automatically come back into the main room for the last 10 minutes. So let's give it a try. Okay, here we go. Is here. So thank you so much for your participation on the Padlet. I'm sure that you noticed that there are way too many resources that you can even explore in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I deliberately designed it in a way that this Padlet will be available to you after the workshop. So you could always go back and continue looking at any resource and using them in your own professional work. So just a quick.
At 3:30, right?
Okay, I think we have somebody's.
Okay. What does she want it on? She wants it on a Zoom or
I think
Google
somebody's phone is on.
MS
So,
Teams. Okay.
okay, so let's just recap what we're trying to accomplish here is to redefine, remix, re-examine what is the CRSE framework that was put out by New York State at the beginning of the year, and how we can transfer that into the online environment, and recognizing that the CRSE framework is a much broader view than only focusing on English learners. Obviously, we're focusing on multiple expressions of diversity, race, social class, gender, language, sexual orientation, nationality, religion, and ability, and that we recognize all of these dimensions of identity as assets for teaching and learning. And my colleague, Maria Dove, and I did a Long Island ASCD presentation on this topic to school leaders, and we pulled out a few things from this document and wanted to show that to you. So there are 5 large stakeholder groups here: the students, the teachers, the school leaders, district leaders, and parents and community members. And what we have done, which was really very brilliant, Maria Dove, my colleague, did this. She fed the entire CRSE document, the appropriate part, into this word art, and take a look what happens. So how can students cultivate CRSE? Take a look at all the words that are popping up. What can we focus on from their perspective? How could we help them develop empathy, understanding, collaboration, respect, and so forth? When it comes to teachers, here are the main ideas in the document. Of course, we talked about it: high expectations, cooperative learning, building rapport, very, very important in a time of crisis, variety of perspectives recognized, and addressing implicit and, of course, explicit bias, because there's plenty of that, but also addressing implicit bias in our work. When it comes to school leaders, what their job is to assess and respond to school climate. I love the part about listening, supporting teachers, informing parents, and engaging families. Lots of really important messages for school leaders. Similarly to district leaders, if this is an important framework and it's a valuable framework, then let's commit to it. Let's review our district policies, and let's make sure that there is diversity as a valuable asset of our entire district. Building capacity is a really big part too. And finally, parents and the community members have an important role in this as well, especially now that in a time of crisis, we need to stay connected to our families, and it has to be a two-way street, that we collaborate, we co-teach with our parents as well if we're continuing starting in the fall. 2 absolutely critical readings. If you feel that you are going to log on to that CRSE website and check out what New York State has to say right away, but if you also want to learn more, I recommend at least these 2 books. Django Paris, in a very gentle but firm voice, critiqued Gloria Ledson-Billings, who introduced culturally responsive pedagogy decades ago. And Django Paris said, that's not enough. We're not going far enough if we teachers are simply responding to our students' cultural and linguistic identities. Instead, we have to make sure that we are considering our students' lived experiences as an asset, and we make every effort to sustain that. Similarly, I recommend Zaretta Hammond's book, Cultural Responsive Teaching and the Brain, and I especially appreciate how Zaretta Hammond says that, yes, we do have to address bias, implicit bias, and focusing on a whole range of cultural and social, racial, and sociological challenges that we are facing in this country. But most importantly, we also have to make sure that we build capacity, brain power, processing skills, and capacity for rigorous work. So 2:57, we have a couple of minutes. I think we're doing pretty well with time. I'm going to ask you in the chat box to type in questions, comments, what thoughts maybe challenged you, what I can address with you better. And thank you for the positive feedback. I really learned to appreciate what Zoom can offer us and connect in these difficult times. And thank you for those of you who keep coming back to all these workshops that I'm offering. These were quite challenging for me to, as you know, hot off the press, freshly developed. There was a question there, I don't want it to disappear. So in the chat box, let's scroll back. What concrete actionable things can teachers do to increase the rigor in remote and blended learning setting? That is an absolutely critical question. So when you look at rigor, think of 3 things: rigor in the content, rigor in the process, rigor in the product. So if you're trying to do all 3 at the same time, it's just going to be teaching at the frustration level. So when you think of rigor, this is the good old Caroline Tomlinson differentiated model content, process, product. If you're introduced something that is rigorous in the content, make sure that your process and your product, the way you are going to be breaking it down and chunking it and addressing it in manageable pieces, you're going to do that. You might introduce a very difficult concept, but the content that you're introducing on, such as a picture walk, as you are talking about a particular character development, rather than introducing the character development concept using very, very difficult content. So try to navigate the content, process, and product triad from different angles when it comes to where are you going to put your focus on rigor and how you're going to scaffold the other two. I hope that that answered the question. Are there any quick questions? I think that was the only one from Maddie. Oh,
We did have someone say that it was so informative, they thanked you, and they wish that they had found out about these webinars sooner. So I just want to mention again, I just threw the link to the Long Island Auburn YouTube channel in there, because all of the sessions that Dr. Honigsfeld has delivered for us can be found there, the recordings of all of those sessions. And today's will be there as well. If you visit the Padlets, we've included the video recordings there also. So even